Mark Russell passed away, we kind of connected the relationship to baseball. And so we looked at the schedules and thought, Sunday, my gosh, there's a 2 o'clock game. Maybe you could come up on a Sunday. And it also happens to be the first day of the Chautauquan season, so a few of the friends could make this. And we're actually going to videotape some remarks here, just so we have it. And as you can see, I turned into video some stuff that even Bob didn't know we were doing. So we're going to share a little bit of Bob Sherman. We're going to share a little bit of memories or two, which I would happen to have this because we're capturing this for the family. I mean, that's what we're doing here at the Robert Jackson Center. Bob and Lori came here when they were in town. This was a stopping point for them. They came to events here. And so Bob and Lori, the ghosts of Bob and Lori are in these seats, having attended many of our notable events here at the Jackson Center. And the Jackson Center, just briefly, started in 2001 and really designed to advance the legacy of Robert Jackson. It was the answer to the Jeopardy question, named the only person who was a Solicitor General, Attorney General, and a Justice of the Supreme Court. And oh, by the way, Chief Prosecutor at the Nuremberg trial. I mean, and died at age 61 in 1954, and this center is really designed to advance his legacy, and it's been going strong, and all these other people have been in the middle of all of this during that time period. So to me, it was apropos that we somehow tie in and consistent with, because Bob and Lori were here, normally here for a day or two, that we would have a game at the park. And those games, when we did that, they would start here at 5 o'clock, and Bob, Lori, and a bunch of Chautauquans, and then we'd progress down to the ballpark. So in a strange way, we're kind of replicating all of that. So if I could, and Ed Tomasini's at the board here, we're going to show 3 really brief audios of Bob. And I got to tell you, he didn't know we were doing it. You know, it was one of those things, we got him geared up, and he was just started telling war stories. And my cell phone, all of a sudden, I thought, I better record this and then put stuff on top of it. So you'll hear three. So if we could start that, Ed, we'll watch that.
Sorry.
You're at Forbes Field, and you're age 5.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And but they washed down the cobblestone, and it still lives in my memory. I can't quite describe the smell, but it was clean. It was somewhat foreign in that it was not a smell you normally smell. Wasn't offensive. It wasn't perfumed. It was just that water on the cobblestone. I don't know, it may have been a couple of years later, it rained somewhere in the 3rd or 4th inning. And it rained enough that it was going to be a problem. No problem for the ground crew. They spread a liquid all over the infield, et cetera, and part of the outfield. And then they lit it. It was gasoline. And you saw this huge.
Your 1931, 32, and 33 time period.
You know,
The Pirates weren't particularly good, were they?
I remember a guy named Gus Sewell.
Gus Sewell, yep.
Played first base. Trying to remember who the shortstop was.
Was Archie Vaughn? He
Got it, right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pie Trainer, was he the third baseman?
Pie Trainer was a coach at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. But he still looked like he was in shape.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Of course, Hannes Wagner was was one of the coaches at the time.
Right.
Yeah. Do you remember your first Indians game? Was that?
Yeah, League Park.
Yeah.
Against the Yankees. Gary, Ruth, that whole crew. And I remember getting very excited in 8th or 9th inning. Indians had been trailing, and now they were getting to whoever was pitching at that point. And that was my first vocal outburst, I guess. Unfortunately, it did not end well, but it was okay. And Lee Park, you've been there, I assume, right?
Never have, no.
No? The brick outer structure is still on, I think it's East 66th and Lexington.
Okay.
It's down, it's in an industrial area, but they managed to preserve it and do reasonable things with it.
But you, man, the fact is, at the time, you're watching, you see, he saw Gehrig and Ruth. Just put that into perspective.
Yeah.
Was it at the time as a young kid? Did you know it was Gehrig and Ruth?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was your favorite player? I mean, aside Bob Feller?
Had to be, yes. I think Colavito would come close.
With the bat?
I was listening in that dining room, living room, when, I can't remember the announcer's name, he was really a good announcer, and describing his 4 home run episode. All on radio, no TV at that point. That was truly exciting. And Jack Graney.
And Jimmy Dudley.
Right.
There you go. Yeah, Jimmy Dudley.
Yeah, the voices of the announcers are probably as ingrained as anything else.
Yeah. My Cleveland Indian fans, of which there are many, I said, you think you're a fan, you're a nobody. Let me tell you about Bob Sherman. In fact, more importantly, you can hear it from him. Because we would mess it up. We would mess it up.
Then, because it's a great story.
All right, I will attempt this. You'll have to excuse certain lapses of words. And that's the reason I'm drinking the beer.
That clears the mind. It's amazing how that's worked. Yeah, I get it.
Okay. So my mother is in Tucson because my brother, who is in the Air Force, is in Tucson. And I go out to visit Mom once a year. It just so happens that once a year is when the Indians are in spring training. Right.
Sick about it.
Matter of fact, I stop at High Corbett Field.
Yes.
Right.
Ooh, there's a golf course there
Very
too.
good. Anyhow, but I eventually get to Mother, see, and the usual wonderful greeting and so forth. And I'm staying at the Doubletree, which is just opposite the park. And each morning I get up and I run, I don't know, 3-4 miles around there, and then I go to that marvelous restaurant that had great Mexican food for breakfast. When I took Mother to the ball games, it was an adventure in and of itself, because Mother did not know baseball, in spite of the fact she grew up in a household with my father, a avid Pittsburgh Pirate fan, and me, and we were in adjoining rooms. He was in the living room with the Zenith, listening to the Pirates game, and I'm 10 feet away on, I'm not sure what the make was.
RCA?
Anyhow, listening to the Indians game. And in between, we're going, and my mother is in the kitchen going fucking crazy. Yeah, right. Okay, so, anyhow, but I persuade her to go to a game now and then, almost always. It was an adventure in itself, in that Mother said, the stuff that they sell, like hot dogs, that's dreck, okay? And so she would have a package of sliced carrots, various vegetables, and you know, you have not lived until you've had carrots and beer together. That's a sarcasm.
There's a treat.
Okay. Anyhow, there's a game scheduled, I believe. And on this particular morning, I called Mom and I said, I'll go over and I'll get tickets. I go to the ballpark and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning and there's no one there. I mean, literally no one there. That's kind of strange. And I see something posted that they're playing in Scottsdale that day. Oh, shit. So I sit in the stands. You've been there, so you know what the bleachers look like. Along the first base line. And I'm just looking at the field and the marvelous symmetry of that field, any baseball field. I mean, need not tell the three of you anything about how baseball fields are charming, and a number of other words. Anyhow, I look out and I think, I could go out and maybe see how it feels to be on the field. I get out there and I'm standing on first base and kicking it, looking around. There's nobody here. And all of a sudden I take off, okay, and I slide into second base. I now dust myself off, look around to make sure that people with white coats are not watching me. Right?
Yeah, the funny farm.
And I'm watching the pitcher very cagily. And he turns and throws to second base. I detect the move immediately and take off for third.
You did?
Yeah.
You broke?
Huh?
You broke for
You
third.
broke for third?
I broke for third. Yeah.
What was he thinking?
Right.
You think he's very well?
I hit third base about the time the ball reaches it, and the third baseman or whoever's covering it drops the ball and it rolls 15 feet away.
I could not have told the story like this.
Being the great athlete that I am, I leaped to my feet, toward home plate, and head first slide, safe. I scored a run without the benefit. I now am really desperately looking around like, Jesus, if anybody saw me, I'm in deep doo-doo. No one evidently did. So I'm there kind of huffing and puffing, obviously, and I hear this very distinct sound, and there's a sound of, of metal spikes on concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah, everybody. No more.
History.
Yeah. And they're coming up kind of a slanted walkway. And I don't turn and look, not immediately at least, and I hear the steps going away from me. So I take the risk and I look, and there's a guy walking away to my left, and he's got his jacket on, and the big number on the back is 19. And I think, holy shit, it's Bob Feller, who worked out with the team at that point. I'm not sure how far beyond it. When did he retire? Doesn't matter. Anyhow, I begin to get kind of willies in there. This is my childhood hero from the time I was 11. And when he had, this incredible fastball, I need not tell you about Bob Feller. I'm sitting there thinking, if he comes back, what do I say to him? How do I open a conversation with God? Thinking about the great duels that he and Hal Newhouser used to have when Newhouser was with the Tigers.
Yeah.
And I think, I wonder how that whole thing came out. Just in that wondering stage, and I hear the spikes coming back. Click, 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 click. And he has to kind of pass me, I guess, to get to the passageway. I somehow manage, heart and throat, to stand up, introduce myself, tell him I suppose, I'm not sure what I said to him as an admirer. I said, but I was just sitting here, Bob, I managed to get Bob out of my mouth, And I was wondering, in those pitching matchups with Hal Newhouser, how did it come out? He said, I won 12 and he won 3, and thanks for asking. and he walked out.
That's a most amazing story.
I'll tell you a better story that involves Lori, and involves, how do I say this? The woman is beyond description, and I think saintly is a couple of steps below where she was, which doesn't mean that she was by any means devoid of an occasional profanity, and had this kind of curious sense of humor. She also, and I think this is maybe what you're referring to, was impatient with get on with this sort of thing. She didn't like a lot of flowery stuff. So now it's our 60th anniversary. I don't know whether we're in here, I think we're in the dining room. In any case, and the children are all there, and a couple of guests and so forth. And I think it was after the meal, but that's insignificant, excuse me. And I began to do a small recitation, not with dates and times and so forth, but appreciation for everything she was. She was the smartest person I've known other than my grandson, and Greg. Okay?
Mitch.
Right.
You're in pretty high company.
Yeah.
We're sitting there, and she's at one end of the table, I'm at the other end of the table, and I reach that point where I say, and our marriage of 60 years, and she puts on this face as though she'd been pierced by something, and says, 60 fucking years.
That's amazing. That's a great.
Everybody's on the floor.
Of course. Oh, that's fabulous.
So it took her by surprise.
She allowed a little smile, not much, in the corner of her mouth.
I want to read a note that one of the individuals who could not join us, but definitely wanted to be part of it, Jeff Miller. And Jeff, he went down to Cleveland, and your dad was gracious in inviting many of us to come to games. And often it would start with a meal, and you joined too. And maybe I was on a couple of those things. And Jeff Miller was part of that group of people, along with others that were here. But Jeff wrote something which sort of hits the mark. My time with Bob Sherman was limited, but always wonderful. His interests were broad, but we bonded deeply over baseball. His knowledge of the game was incredible. He remembered precise details of games and particular plays that showed his passion. His famous story of running the bases as a ghost runner in the desolate stadium captured the heart of young baseball aficionados. And that's brilliant. It really was. Trips to see the tribes included lessons from the master. His wealth of knowledge made my head spin and my heart warm. At times I had to pry some of it out of him because he wanted to hear my perspectives. I, however, just wanted Bob to hold forth with his funny and fascinating views on this great game. Trips to the farm included wild rides, we've all had them, wild rides into the back 40. His driving was as rangy and wild as his personality. I loved all the time I spent with Bob. He was gracious and generous, host giving the best seats for games, lush array of food and laughter and love that made me feel close to him. Along with Greg, Mark Weissman, I felt part of the extended family. I will miss this marvelous man. Love, Jeff Miller. And that captured a lot. But I also want to give a little bit of time, and Mark, again, we're doing this for the kids. Do you want to have a vignette or two? I know you've had more experience. Yeah, we're all going to get a chance. Mark, you're first.
Anyway, want to thank Greg. He makes stuff happen. He made the Jackson Center happen. He's the guy who's in charge of those videos. What a beautiful legacy you left us with Bob. And by the way, Barbara Rate's comment was, well, we're not going to have many people here because Bob made a lot of friends at Chautauqua, but most of them are dead. And that's kind of true, but he did make a lot of friends here. Anyway, I could tell a lot of Bob Sherman stories, but I'll try to keep it brief. I actually met Bob Sherman 30 years ago when he was a student in my baseball class, the first one I taught here. I've taught a lot of people over the years, but I'm not sure I ever bonded as deeply and immediately as I did with Bob Sherman. Anyway, I'm trying to figure out why that was. Why did he feel like a friend after knowing him for 2 days? Part of it was our shared love of baseball. Jeff Miller talked about that. And the way I look at it is we're both immigrant kids. And for immigrant kids like Bob and me, grabbing on to baseball is our ticket to be an American kid. I think we both kind of did that. I did it a generation later than Bob, but I think we did that. By the way, I was thinking about this. Have any of you watched all 18 hours of Ken Burns' baseball documentary? It begins with Gerald Early, African-American scholar, saying, when U.S. culture is rubble, we'll only be remembered for 3 things: our Constitution, jazz, and baseball. The 3 most American things. Bob embraced all 3. He couldn't get more American than that. He loved jazz, he loved baseball, he was an ACLU guy. So anyway, I think I bonded with Bob because of the baseball stuff, but it was more than that. And we've already sort of said it. He's a great storyteller. By the way, Stacy, I don't know if your mother agreed with that. Because when he told stories, she would say, get on with it. It's too long. And I thought, wow, he's setting up a punchline. But they had different rhythms. Not that she was a bad storyteller. They had different rhythms. I got that right? What's that? Definitely. Yeah, okay. But not only was I a good audience for his stories, those of you who know me, I tell stories, and he was a good audience for me. So that's part of our bond. Jeff already alluded to this in what he said. Bob kind of spoiled me for going to ball games any other way, because if we went to a ball game, certainly Greg did that. I mean, he didn't just invite me, he'd say, bring other people. And that hospitality was absolutely stunning, because some of you guys were strangers, but then Bob was your friend in 2 minutes. But a ball game was going to that beautiful farm, having this great spread of food, getting the best parking space and the best seats. It was hard to go to a ball game any other way after Bob spoiled me. And I'm thinking I brought people to go to games, but I also think I went to a lot of games with half the doctors at the Cleveland Clinic. They all seemed to be Bob's friends. I will tell you about one guy I took out there about 25 years ago, Dan Cavis, who at the time was 15 years old, and he was a serious Cleveland Indian fan, even though he grew up in New Jersey, because he loved the movie Major League. So I take this 15-year-old kid with me. I knew he was going to love it. But he had probably the highlight of his life, because he left the ballpark with an autographed Jim Thome baseball, which now I'm saying that Dan's probably about 40. It's sitting in his trophy case at home. Every time I see Dan, he comes to Chautauqua every summer, usually the first words out of his mouth are, how's Bob Sherman? Bob gave Dan Cavis, a 15-year-old kid, one of the real highlights of his life. Dan will be here next week. He's not here now. Bob made a lot of friends. at Chautauqua. And I'm going to end with this. I was thinking, Jeff said this, Greg said this. What marked Bob was his generosity, right? That hospitality. But I think at first, and maybe this was his greatest gift to me, I felt guilty about all that hospitality. I think the first time, and Joe definitely did, he kept trying, the first time Joe Raitt, Barbara's husband, went with me, he kept trying to buy Bob gifts to say thank you. And so we stopped at a farmer's stand, he's buying him corn. Well, he's got 100 acres of corn at his house. But I think the first time at the ball game, I said, I would like to buy you a hot dog. He said, no, your money's no good here. Here's what I think the greatest gift was that he gave me. I learned to accept his gift graciously. I understood he got a lot of pleasure. You know, what do you learn in kindergarten? Share your toys. Bob was a great kindergarten student. He shared his toys. I think his greatest gift to me was I learned to accept those gifts graciously.
So I just wanted to share a Sunday view. I was in the kitchen in our condo in Seattle, and I look around the corner and Joe is in the den, and of course there's a game on a Sunday afternoon, and a phone, he's talking on the phone, and I go, I don't know, maybe every half hour, and he's still on the phone. Another half an hour, he's still on the telephone. I said, who are you talking to? He said, Bob and I are watching a game. So, had to share that one.
The message that Greg read from Jeff Miller pretty much summarizes I met Bob through, and we both were Cleveland Indian fans from when we were little kids, and how his dad took him to the ballpark. My dad took me to the ballpark, and in his book that he gave me of his life that he had written, the early times sort of transplanted right into my life with my dad. So I always felt good when I was with Bob. He was one of the few people who feel good just seeing him, being around him. And I probably visited with Greg and Mark. Mark invited Greg and I many times, and at least a half a dozen times. I remember the first time we went to the ballpark and good seats, and we arrive at the parking lot right next to the stadium, and I've always been impressed with this. The attendant comes up to, we've been expecting you, Mr. Sherman. And two of the attendants, when they knew he was here, rushed up to the car just to say hello to him, you know, the gratitude they expressed towards him. And going back that day, and we visited a farm, and he took us out in the fields, and I'll never forget that. And even the last time I was there, last August, with Mark and Jeff, he seemed to be in pretty good spirits and was able to tell stories, and he even recognized me, although I haven't been there as much as they have, and Mark's a close friend for years. And it was nice, and I was shocked when I heard that he passed away. When was it, December? And we'd only been there in August, so wonderful person, and I knew him through Mark Arlschuler, of course, in the class of baseball. And true Cleveland Indians, the Guardians lost a true fan. And I'm getting up there in age, too. I was probably one of Bob's oldest friends. I hit 90 next month, so.
Concluding things. One is I'm listening to the war stories about graciousness. And before we play this last clip, which will lead us into where we're going down. Hold on a second. Okay. Just a story. Bob called me in the winter, and we talked mostly, our conversations, if they weren't in person, was I was traveling to Detroit to see my kids who were in Detroit, and I'd had a lot of time to kill, so I just got on the phone, and Bob and I killed a lot of time. Not probably quite as much as Joe and Bob talking right through an entire baseball game. That's unbelievable. So he calls me in the winter. He goes, Greg, I've been thinking about you. And just, I've got these great seats, and the Cavaliers. And they were playing on Wednesday. He called on Monday. He goes, you come down and maybe bring your son. My son, Brent, was, probably 10. And he said, you come down, be my guest. You'll like the seats. They're pretty close to courtside. And I go, no, it's a school night. I can't. I go, well, we'd love to have you. We'll take you out for dinner. He's throwing the dinner thing in. You and your son, it would be great. We'll beat downtown the game. And he said, yeah. Well, it's still, Bob, with all due respect, I didn't want to say only a basketball game, but it's cool. He goes, well, oh gosh, and he's just playing me. He's playing me like he goes, oh gosh, did I happen to tell you that the Cavaliers are playing the Chicago Bulls? I go, hold it. Michael Jordan? Courtside? Let me talk to my son right now, like I'm this bogus conversation I'm going to have with my son. And my son, who didn't know much about basketball, Jordan, okay, but he was more concerned whether or not the guy who had the earrings, the flash, who was playing with the Bulls, and that guy, drawing a blank on the name, was he going to play? And when I said yes, I said, Bob, we'll be there right on time, the whole thing. But that's his graciousness. And there's so many other examples, maybe some of which he shared. I'd kind of forgotten in our montage, the last piece we're going to show. This is in 1995. Just to put it in a time frame, Mark, was about 30 years ago when you had your class. You then introduced me to Bob and Lori at the hotel. There's a small hotel right off of the Tally Ho. We had breakfast. Yeah, first time I'd ever met Bob, and I don't know what Mark told Bob about me, but he told the story. He told the Feller story, which, whoa. Now he becomes a rock star extraordinaire, and then we have an opportunity to bring Bob down to throw out the first pitch. Now, like you, Stacy, he spent the afternoon warming up. I mean, took it seriously. I don't know if, Mark, you were part of the throw and catch, but up at Chautauqua he worked out. Everything he worked out. I mean, it was not just simply pull a guy out of the stands, go and pretend to throw first pitch. He really worked it. So I wanted to make sure that we had an appropriate introduction, from Cleveland, Ohio, Rapid Robert Sherman, and you'll see.
The bat boys for tonight's game are Kevin Dudgeon and John Jenkins. Our umpires, Dusty Dellinger and Matt Sullivan. We do have ceremonial first pitches that are going to be thrown out this evening. With us tonight from the Chautauqua County Tobacco Control Coalition, we have Kathy Peters, who, of course, the Tobacco Control Coalition sponsored our team photo giveaway tonight. Let's give Kathy a big hand out there. Get a catcher out there for her.
She's prettier than you.
And next up, we have Mr. Bob Sherman. Bob will be turning 83 years young next week. Let's give Bob a big hand.
I had a warm-up.
He worked all day to get the perfect pitch. He violated Rule 1, which Stacy, Rule 1, never go to the mound. Do not go to the mound. Bob says, no, I'm going to toe the rubber, and I'm going to do what Bob Feller would have done. Throw it 60.6. Don't never do that. only people remember where you threw it to, never from. He violated that completely, went out to the rubber, and his pitch was best described as a worm burner. So we didn't show that. I originally was going to put fireworks after he kind of let it go, but I thought that was probably the best way to end it. So I show that in advance of you throwing it out today. A little advice, don't go to the mound. So, exactly. Well, I'm delighted you all came. We're gonna do a quick tour of the Jackson Center and then leave here around 1:30 with an eye towards getting the game. You're all welcome. I have tickets for everybody if you want to go. Get a free hot dog and see Stacy throw out the first pitch.
Take your bracelet off. I'll lay you down.
You're up. Singing ceremony on the first pitch. Stacy's from Cleveland and daughter of the King
So I can just
Bob
stop
Sherman.
wherever I want.
Bob was a Chicagoan and avid baseball fan who walked in the shadow of Bob Feller. Please welcome Stacy.
That's probably good. Leave her in. I'm a left red. You didn't see her good stuff.
Good job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That was great.